Welcome to the Minx Muse podcast. I'm your host, Crimson Minx, creatrix of Minx Muse, a fiercely feminine playhouse that cultivates self-discovery and empowerment through classes, workshops, and events centered around esoerotic dance, transformative movement, and mystical exploration. During this podcast, I'll be having candid conversations with fiercely feminine witches, seductresses, and dark goddesses living in Austin, Texas. Welcome, Dez Raven, to the Minx Muse podcast.
Hi.
What are we drinking today?
We're drinking tequila and water with a splash of lime.
Excellent. Cheers, my dear.
Cheers to you.
Thank you for being the first guest on the podcast.
I'm super excited.
Woo. I wake up.
Yeah. Yep, always.
Excellent. So, Dez, how would you describe yourself in a sentence or less?
Healer, lover, booty bouncing, sensual human.
I like it.
Yeah.
And that kind of encompasses a lot of things you do in life. So, you do a lot of things.
I do a lot of things. Yes, yeah.
You work here, so you're a teacher here at Minx Muse. You teach a glorious weekly stretch class called Softcore Stretch. And you also do intuitive readings here.
Yes.
But let's take a step back. What are kind of all of the things you do here and elsewhere?
Around Austin, I teach a ton of movement classes. So from pole fitness to flexibility, choreography, stretch, my own Fluxcraft class.
We'll get to that.
Yes. Twerking, inversions. I teach it all. As far as movement classes go. Okay. And then I also offer intuitive sessions around Austin.
Like doing like readings, card readings, and...
Yeah. Card readings, therapeutic stretch sessions that involve intuitive aspects to it. And I mainly do that here, but, at events around Austin, things like that too.
Yeah, that's cool. That's one thing I really love about you is you've taken some of your like basic movement foundation and you've infused it to be very witchy and very jazz.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you talked about, you mentioned Fluxcraft. So that I feel like was maybe your first step into like, I like movement, but I also am this like intuitive, healing, witchy woman.
Yes.
So what is Fluxcraft, first off?
Fluxcraft is my business, first of all.
Okay.
But it began as a mat class, a mat spirituality class. And it started with, I was doing a yoga practice. It was a cardio yoga practice. Okay. But within the class, I was integrating other styles of just like what I enjoyed, flexibility. And so I wasn't quite aligning with the curriculum of the course that I was practicing. And I knew I wanted to develop my own, which involved shaking your ass, which involved, witchy wisdom, which involved empowering people in a very different way that involved movement and conversation and different tools that we can use for growth and healing. So I combined it all into one. I think it's incredible class. You gotta own your shit, right?
Yes, of course.
And so, yeah.
And even in your non-Fluxcraft classes, you do bring that energy. I like how you see movement as a spiritual practice, as opposed to, say, something to lose weight or get in shape. And it's not your typical, what you would expect from that is like a yoga type practice or some type of more, I don't know, like, centered grounded thing, which is cool, but like you said, there's ass shaking in it, or like your stretch classes, it's like dark, loud music and candlelit room, and it can be very like, it's not necessarily zen. Right. So you're creating like this spiritual, soulful movement practice and something that's like, can be like energetic.
Correct, yeah. I want it to be everything to be a ceremony, always. And have that just tapping into your own intuition through movement, right? And the connection of that. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I truly believe that you can have like a spiritual, soulful practice, and if you're not moving your body, you're not moving energy through it, you're stagnant, you're not going to be able to necessarily tap into like higher intuition or really like integrate that mind body awareness that's super important. So moving your body is important, whether that's through dance, whether that's through some type of fitness, it's just some type of like brisk activity. Yeah, so I will share the first class I ever took with you was a Fluxcraft, and that was up at ATX Pole Fitness in Round Rock. And so I didn't know what to expect, but it's like this mix of like this stretching and then some kind of like, there was like some booty shaking movement. And then at the end, you had us you had records for us and we had to like break them. And then we were saying what we were releasing from our life, and I like had the broken record on my altar at home, and I was like, look at me release it.
Yes!
And it was just like, and I noticed like, I think you bring that kind of mindfulness to maybe people who have more like pedestrian mindsets of like, oh, I was just here to get some exercise, and then you really introduce this idea of mindfulness to them in this maybe unexpected way. So it's cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I remember that class. Now I know. Yes! That was a cool one. And
Yes, as I first met you. Wow. And I was like, she's my people.
Yes. Yeah.
So you've definitely evolved since then. I noticed that you're now doing more intuitive readings, whether that's through like cards or whether it's through, I know you do like intuitive stretching where you kind of read people's body energy through stretching. So the intuitive thing, have you always had that kind of ability? Is that something that came to you recently, or what's the backstory of that?
I didn't realize I had it. It wasn't defined.
Okay.
But yes, it's always been there. As a child, I felt things and people very intensely, and wasn't sure how to even put it into words what I was feeling.
Okay. Like empath type things?
Yes,
or,
but like
psychic things as well?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Feeling things before they happen. Things like that, and taking on other people's emotions really intensely, and which manifested as anxiety. Like was very, anxiety and not sure of the world, but just trying my best, and everything was here and here, pretty intensely feeling. And in high school, I remember telling my mom about an instance when I felt something was coming, and it came, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I just have to tell you this happened. And she was like, oh yeah, it happens to me all the time too. And then we had this like, really amazing connection, which we already had an amazing connection, but I was able to put it into words and ask her questions about it and connect with her on things. And that slowly developed into, bigger practices, and me exploring the tarot and reading for friends, and then freaking myself the fuck out with stuff.
Like, wait, I intuited that was gonna happen. Yeah.
And so the intuition was a part of it, and then always being a healer, I knew that like I said in the beginning, I'm a lover, and I feel my purpose has always been to serve and heal and help. And even when I was a kid, friends or random people coming to me and saying their deepest, darkest secrets, and it has never felt like a burden. It's always been a really cool thing, and I never identified it. And then once I started identifying it, I was like, oh, my purpose is something bigger than what I'm seeing for myself as well. So just grateful for that as well. So that has developed in line with my intuition as a healer, and it's magical.
Yeah, you are magic. And so, at first the movements, all of that was a hobby. What were you doing before you we're going to get into how you've just recently switched to a full-time, making this life, living this life. Yeah. But what did life look like before all this?
I was a high school teacher.
Okay.
I worked with people with disabilities, and specifically with mental health. And so I definitely tapped into my healing, aspects during that time. And I'm so grateful for those amazing humans and those experiences, because I was able to navigate people in life and in all areas of life. And that's what I did before. And it totally makes sense as to why, my timeline.
Yeah. I have a theory that, especially like in our 20s, say, in our younger years, we do things that at some point we think, oh my gosh, why did I do this? Why did I quote unquote waste my time being maybe a teacher when really I want it to be this this healer, intuitive mover type thing. And truth is, I don't think you would be as effective as you are today if you didn't have that experience. Life's a journey and picking up those skills along the way. And I say that because I want to get into next how this transition, now that you're transitioning full time into being like a healer and a mover and that. But I think it necessitates life experience before you can jump into that.
Absolutely. And
being able to work in the educational system, bless you, that's a tough task.
Yes.
So at what point did you decide, okay, I'm ready to move on and try new things? And what does this transition realistically look like? Because I think sometimes we see people and we think, look at them,
it's fabulous.
They just left their job and now they're living this gypsy bohemian beautiful, fucking doing awesome everything that they love day in and day out. And let's maybe dispel that.
Let's be real.
Let's be real.
Yeah, this shit's rocky. So I transitioned from high school teaching, education, after 7 years. So it's like that 7-year itch,
That's a thing.
Yeah, I had felt my time was done. I had served my purpose. I had my core, call my babies, even though they're in their 20s now, but my core babies had, graduated and moved on, and I was ready to do so too. And right around that time, about a year before I left, I picked up the tarot.
Okay.
And, in high school I played with a Ouija board, and, all those mystical things and crystals and astrology. And
you watched The Craft. You did all those things.
Yes, I did all of that. Seasoned. And so that was a carryover. I asked the tarot my whole last year of quitting, should I do this? What should I do? Or give me some guidance. And my intuition spoke loud and clear. And so then I went the freelance route for a little bit, picked up some gigs along the way because I was terrified of going full freelance. I was also trying to honestly distract myself, and I was afraid. So now diving back into it and welcoming it and being, fully aware of my healing abilities and where I need to go, and my purpose, my higher purpose, and what the source and my intuition are telling me. I'm fucking scared. It's just,
so just to clarify, so Dez left the teaching job. She was kind of doing movement work and teaching and performance gigs and all of that. You then briefly went back into a full-time job for a little bit, and then have recently removed yourself from that again. And that's real. Sometimes you have to do that just because, that's the world we live in, where we need some stability with our pentacle stability.
Right.
Sometimes, that's the reality of it. So you're kind of just jumping back in now, taking on less performances and all that, and really focusing on your movement and healing, because it's a very unique niche you have there. I don't even think a lot of people know that it exists, which is why I was so excited to have you as our first guest, because also as a studio we do a lot of movement and we also do a lot of mystical exploration. And so you combining those into your own personal offerings is quite in line.
Yes, it all makes sense now for sure.
So what does, if say, so I think we kind of get the idea of, you explained Fluxcraft, thank you. We kind of get the idea of what your kind of movement teaching is, especially if it's stretching and flexibility. Now, if someone booked a session with you, what is the difference between, say, just an intuitive reading, and what does that look like? And also, what's this new thing that you're doing, which is the intuitive movement thing?
So intuitive readings that I offer, you're going to have divination. So I have my go-to ride or die oracle deck that I use. And that can look very different for a lot of people.
Okay.
I use that as a tool, but it has definitely developed into meditation, breath work, expressive writing, things that feel good for the individual in the reading. So, so
different for each. Kind of decide when you're meeting with someone. Okay, we're pulling cards, but also I get the sense that there's something that you need to work through right now, and so maybe we're just going to sit and we're going to do some breathing and acknowledging and maybe some emotional things that are going on as well.
Correct. Cool. Yeah. Usually homework. I always say, this is what I would like for you to do. Cool. This is the exercise or some kind of application I would like you to do after this. So when you come back to me, or just if you don't come back to me in your journey, you have something to apply and work toward. That's always going to look different. But safe, comfortable, relaxing, non-stressful. That's like the biggest things there.
Gotcha.
And then my therapeutic stretch session.
That's what it's called. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, intuitive stretch is basically that. That it can start similar, as in it starts with a card. If I feel like someone wants to kind of, break the ice and see what we need to work through, we can pull a card and talk about that. But other than that, it's utilizing. It usually starts with some talk, some conversation about what we want to work through. What areas of the body you're feeling tightness from, pain, something's just not working right, and then we together work on partner stretching. So I guide the person through partner stretching, breath work again, and release to work through the aspects of life. So it can be intense. Again, very safe, very comforting session, and it connects the whole thing, mind, body, and spirit. And my people leave feeling really good.
Yeah,
I do too. And I'm like, yes. So
there is so much scientific proof that's pointing towards how our body is actually responding to like energetic stuckness, or which could also be interpreted as emotional stuckness. And so just being aware of that and having someone to like facilitate like working that energy out of your body, and a lot of it's acknowledging what it is. So I think that's a really cool I think it's a really cool offering. That's why I wanted to talk about it, because there's so many different healing modalities out there, and I like that you've kind of used what you've kind of mastered over, this past time, and created your own that works. And I know people who have done it, and it's been so powerful for them. So so we've touched on, you do a lot for other people. So how do you like feed your own soul? How do you kind of keep your creativity and your intuition and your own energy alive?
Tequila.
No problem with that. Yep.
Yes.
What else besides the tequila?
Besides tequila, I write. So I write poetry. That's my biggest thing. So I've got a nice, big, huge, heavy Remington typewriter that I know my apartment neighbors can just hear me clicking away late at night.
Cool.
I know, it's so cool. I feel like some with my little Edgar Allan Poe sweater. I write poetry, and just generally stream of consciousness writing. Not strict writing. Poetry is typically stricter for me when I'm feeling it, but when I don't feel like typing away and I just want to get some words out, I'll handwrite it or get on my laptop and type some stuff out. So expressive writing is my form of becoming in touch with myself, my intuition, and working through things that I'm feeling, creating boundaries for myself. I also have super intense sessions of lighting candles in my little space and turning off all the lights and talking to the source, and
that's cool.
Just talking out loud for sometimes 30 minutes and seeing what comes. And that's been an incredible realization pretty recently. Yeah.
I like that. I like that. The first thing that struck me about that is that it's an alternative to journaling. Because I know that I should be journaling more personally, but sometimes, I don't know, I'm not a writer, so that act is kind of a bit more difficult to me. So that just really inspired me to be like, hey, Crimson, like before you go to bed, if you're not going to be pulling out the old journal, like, why don't you just speak out loud? It's just verbal journaling.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it brings on the same response. All of a sudden you're making like connections as you're speaking, and you're like, I didn't even know that was in me, but that was deeper rooted in there and needed to be said out loud. And so absolutely. Yeah. Both of those things are how I heal and take care of myself and massage. And tequila.
Yes, all the things. So writing. You actually recently wrote something that's pretty powerful that you've birthed into the world, and that is the pole tarot. So we didn't really talk about pole dancing so much, but you are a very accomplished pole dancer. When did you start pole dancing?
2008.
2008, wow.
Maybe 2007. Yeah, right around that time.
I know it's not like a focus of yours anymore, so I don't want to delve too deeply into it, but it's like a community that you've been in for a very long time.
Very long time. Yeah, so started dancing and then took on teaching in 2010 and been teaching ever since, and have done a ton of competitions and had a sponsorship and performances all around town and traveling for performances, and it's been a blessing for sure. Yeah.
And you took that, and you took your knowledge of that world, and you created
Pole Tarot.
The Pole Tarot deck. So what's the Pole Tarot deck?
Oh, the Pole Tarot deck. Can I tell you the history of it?
Yes, please.
It's a funny story. So my partner and I, Ashley Steele, my creative, amazing partner, we went to dinner one night, and they had these funny paintings on the wall that were like sharks, some kind of funky sharks, and we just couldn't stop laughing, likely after tequila. And she, we had a great joke, and then a couple weeks later, she brought me this drawing of this shark that she had drawn, and she was like, "Oh, here, it's our inside joke." And joke aside, she's an incredible artist. And I was like, "Oh, thank you." I took it home. I, had it on my altar for a while, and then one late night, I just thought, "Whoa, what if we did a Pole Tarot deck?" Yeah. And so we had consistent coffee dates. That was just our thing. And it's still our thing. And the next coffee date, I brought it up and asked her if she wanted to do it with me and be the artist, and I would be the author, and we would just do this deck together. And so 9 months later, just like a baby, it happened. And it's just we're kicking it off. It's been out for a couple months now, and
major arcana
just
at this
major
point.
arcana at this point. ... Yes, big things to come. So yes.
So the art was all inspired by pole dancers,
correct?
And so all of the imagery are people pole dancing. But you don't necessarily need to be a pole dancer to like appreciate it. Obviously, any advice on like how we could maybe take that deck and incorporate it into some type of movement practice? And it comes with, I should mention, a companion book that Dez wrote. So Dez did an interpretation of each major arcana card, and it's so brilliant. I love it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So utilizing it in your movement practice, each card within the booklet has a descriptor. So you could start, when you book your studio time or you book your class, before class, you could pull a card and reflect on the card, and within the booklet it says ask you specific questions to pertain to your movement. So each card is different.
Give us an example one.
The Lovers.
Okay.
So that's a sexy pull, but it doesn't have to mean a partnership, like a life partnership or an intimate partner. It can mean a pole partner, a dance partner. So maybe if you pull that card before class, you should work with someone in class on something. Maybe it could even mean pushing yourself kind of out of your boundaries and becoming part of a community within class. It could mean to take some kind of duo class, or to reach out to someone that you enjoy in class and hang out with them. So it can be really anything pertaining to life and and movement. Maybe set a date and dance together,
Yeah.
So things like that.
I dig it. So even if you're going to a yoga class or something like that, pull a card before, and it could be the strength card, and it's like asking you to like draw upon that feminine strength in your movement and to be more aware of that, where it can
setting your intention before class. Pull the death card.
Yeah.
What needs to go away?
What are you releasing?
What do you get rid of?
I mean, that's so rad. So what a cool.
We're excited about it.
Yeah. And I will put links to all of these in the show notes, by the way, so if anyone's interested in like seeing your website and seeing the deck and all of those things, they can learn more.
Wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes.
Yeah, so I'd like to wrap things up by asking these standard questions that we're going to ask all our guests, so people can get used to these questions.
Okay.
And so the first question is, what is your personal mantra?
Own your story.
Own your story.
Own your story for as, wild and crazy and sad and exciting and beautiful and loving and just, for what it is. It's your story. You have a story to share to others. Like, I get choked up when I talk about owning my story. I'm like, but yeah, and that pertains to also owning, other aspects or exploring other aspects like trauma and things that you've worked through and things that you have to offer to the world. So own your story.
Own your story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, because have you ever read a story about just everything was great and everything was great and everything was great? No, because that would be really boring and you would stop reading it. So embracing the hills in life and the ups and the downs and the lessons and all of that. I like that.
It's
Own
good.
Your story.
It's good and it's brave, but it's good.
Yeah, and it's hard to be able to kind of embrace some things that may be embarrassing or not. You feel like you're showing up at your best, but part of your story.
It's
so
part of the human story, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're here to be humans.
Yes. Thank God.
That involves all the things. Okay, so what is your favorite sensuous indulgence?
Anything. Chocolate peanut butter.
Chocolate peanut butter?
Dude, anything. Chocolate peanut butter, someone's I'm like, what? What you got? What you got for me? So yeah, chocolate peanut butter. So if anyone wants to send me anything.
Well, if anyone books a session or comes to class,
chocolate peanut butter.
they know how to get on her good
Please,
side.
vegan. I love you.
Oh, that's right, because you're a vegan, right?
Right, correct.
How long have you been vegan for?
A little over 3 years.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, we won't delve that. Maybe I have a feeling we'll have you on again, so maybe we can touch on that next
I'd love
time.
to. Yeah.
So what is one thing that you're currently manifesting? And this doesn't have to be, you don't have to be revealing any secrets or anything, but I'm sure all of us are trying to manifest multiple things. So what's one thing that you'd like to share with us that you're, looks like you have the
yeah. Owning my feminine and living in my feminine, allowing others to
so what does living in
give and for me to receive.
For you to receive, okay.
I have always had a problem receiving. I still do. It's really hard for me to receive. But yeah, allowing others to sometimes take care of you and love you and to accept it and be like, that's cool. Because by allowing that, you're teaching them to allow that too. So owning my feminine.
Owning your feminine. I love that.
Yes.
Feminine traits receptivity, which you're talking about, beauty. It's obviously, this is a fiercely feminine podcast, as we say in the beginning. So, I like that. I'm really happy about that answer.
Yes.
Good for you. And some can't be in our feminine all the time, but just allowing
Absolutely.
it more can be really impactful in your life
Mm-hmm.
and the world. I think
It's working.
Okay. So, last question.
Mm-hmm.
What is one thing in Austin that we should all check out?
Minx Muse.
Oh,
of course. No shit.
How about other than Minx Muse, though? I love you.
I love Spider House down the street.
Spider House,
Ballroom, cafe, coffee. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, the first time I went to Spider House, I had lived in Austin for probably around 9 months at that point, and it was the first place that I went where I was like, oh, this feels so Austin to me.
Mm-hmm.
I love that place.
It's so good. You can work there, you can drink there. Arlo's is right there.
The best
so you
vegan
can,
burger
stuff
in
your face.
the world. Yes.
You do everything there.
Yes, and they had the ballroom there where there's a lot of burlesque shows and things to check out.
Yeah. Spelling bee. Hello, I'm really excited about that.
That makes one of us now.
Yeah, exactly. All the things. Yeah.
Yeah, Spider House.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Dez, thank you so much for being on the show today. Let's give it a last cheers.
Cheers. Yeah.
It's been so fun talking to you and learning more about you. And yeah, and thank you everyone for checking us out and checking out the first Minx Muse podcast. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Minx Muse podcast. You can find show notes and learn more about the studio at www.minxandmuse.com. Go get your life, boo, and we'll see you again soon.